Ibrahim Traore came to power, and you know what he did? Amazingly. And I'm going to translate what he said concerning this to you. You will be shocked. Respect, lovely people. African leaders have always given us the impression that Africa cannot develop or survive without foreign aid. But Ibrahim Traore, the leader of Burkina Faso, is having a different version of that understanding, which practically opposes that mentality. I can assure you that you will be shocked what Ibrahim Traore said about the development of Africa and the message he sent out there to the West together with the rest of the African leaders. He put the message out to the West together with the rest of the African puppet leaders who are still doing the yes-a thing to the West. You know, at the end of the day, we must all understand that there is a wind of change blowing, and it is time for us to have a change. It is no doubt that African nations can actually develop using their own resources. That is a fact. African countries have many natural resources they can use to develop their economy without needing foreign aid. We can actually develop without the help of IMF and the World Bank. It is a well-known fact that our leaders are giving us the impression that African nations can actually survive on aid from the World Bank and support from the IMF simply because of the transaction of the dollar from the IMF and the World Bank into their bank account. It has nothing to do with development. In fact, to phrase the narrative, it should rather be our bank account cannot survive without IMF and the World Bank, not the nations in Africa. Because we have so many resources that we can use with proper management. We can use them to develop our nations. Let's look at some simple ways we can achieve this, along with examples from other countries that have successfully developed using their own resources. Before we get into it, kindly subscribe and hit the like button to stay updated. Respect. Instead of focusing on talking about the problem all the time and complaining about what is wrong all the time, let's focus on talking about the solution. Africa, first of all, need to initiate good management and fair deals. Government have to manage resources well and be transparent to avoid what? Corruption. This simply means making sure that the money from the resources is used for the country's benefit, not ending in the pocket of the leaders. Because all the time, the usual trend that we have been dealing with is that deals are actually made with small percentage, which can actually, in a way, affect the development of our nation in a bit positive way, but it all ends in the pocket of greedy leadership. And this needs to change with immediate effect. For example, Botswana has managed its diamond resources well, leading to better schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. We need to develop policies to maintain fair contracts in regards to our resources. It is important to make fair deals with companies that extract resources from Africa. This ensures that a good portion of the profit stays in the country. Number two, we must focus on processing our resources locally. Instead of just exporting raw materials, African countries can set up industry to process these materials locally. This creates jobs and add more value to export. Burkina Faso has now built their own gold refinery with the engineers from Burkina Faso to refine their own gold. And I tell you, in the near future, mark my words, the gold reserve in Burkina Faso cannot be compared to any other nation. Nigeria also, for example, is working on refining its oil locally rather than exporting crude oil. That's a good initiative, but with bad governance, that brilliant idea can only reflect in the bank account of bad leaders. We need to also consider diversification. African countries should not rely just on one resources. By developing different sectors, we can create more sustainable economy. Chile, a country in South America, for example, has been able to move from just mining copper to also focusing on technology and services. The third thing we need to consider is the necessity to invest in infrastructure. Using resource money to build roads, schools, and power plants can help the economy to grow. Rwanda has invested in infrastructure to support its tourism and technology sector. We must also consider it necessary to engage in human capital development by investing in education and healthcare to help create a skilled workforce, which will attract more industries. In focusing on development, we should not also forget the protection of our environment. We need a sustainable practices in using our resources in a way that doesn't harm the environment to ensure long-term benefits. A small country like Costa Rica in Central America has focused on sustainable tourism and renewable energy, balancing development with environmental protection. We need it. When we talk about Botswana, their prime resources is diamond. Botswana uses its diamond wealth to invest in education, healthcare, and infrastructure, leading to significant economic growth. Now ask yourself, what is wrong with the rest of the African countries? Another example we can look at is Chile, a small country located along the western seaboard of South America. The prime resource of this country is copper. But look at what they did. They diversified their economy by investing in technology and services, reducing its dependence on copper alone. This is telling all Africans that we need to diversify. We can do more than that because we have more than copper. Now, studying Rwanda somehow with limited natural resources but focus on tourism and technology, as I said earlier. They invested heavily in infrastructure and human capital, leading to rapid development despite having fewer natural resources. Africa is not poor, we are rich. By managing natural resources well, adding value locally, building infrastructure, and protecting the environment, African nations can develop their economy sustainably and independently. We don't need IMF, we don't need the World Bank. The IMF and the World Bank always come on board. And the moment they come on board, taxes go high. The poor are being taxed. The citizens suffer. The IMF always come with policies that put the citizens in suffering. All we need to develop is our resources. We have the natural resources, we have the human resources, and Ibrahim Traore believes in Africa. And I'm going to translate what he said concerning this to you. You will be shocked. Dubai, part of the United Arab Emirates, has been able to transform from a small fishing village into major global city. And they are now even thinking of building a smart city. Just look at that. They strategically diversified the economy beyond oil. Dubai started with oil money, but they knew this wouldn't last forever. So what did they do? They invested in other areas like trade, tourism, aviation, real estate, and banking. Now today, for an African going to Dubai, it's like going to heaven. We can also create the heaven here in Africa with the right leadership. As I said before, listening to Ibrahim Traore, this is a man who believes in Africa. Sometimes I ask myself, and I know you also ask yourself, if African leaders move and travel out of their country and they go out there see development, what comes into their mind? When they see the development and infrastructure and beautiful things out there, why is it that it doesn't shake them and move them to do the same thing in their own country? It is simply because their heart is filled with dollar. Their mouth is filled with corrupt cake. Ibrahim Traore, as I said before, listening to him, this is a leader who believes in Africa, not just in Burkina Faso, but he believes in the ability of Africa to transform into the best of the best. Ibrahim Traore, the leader of Burkina Faso, when recently was visited by the people from the diaspora, he sent a strong message to all African leaders, a message to awake them from their sleep. Now, this is what he said. Send this message to raise awareness across the continent. There are some governments that are trying their best to put their people to sleep. They are consistently working on their people anyhow for the benefit of the West. This needs to stop with immediate effect. No one can pass this message better than you. It is necessary to pass this message across the nations. He was addressing the people from the diaspora. He continued, Africa must wake up. The young people must wake up, and we can no longer allow the same policies to continue in this particular age. It is impossible for us to grow with this policy. Africa is still a virgin. Everything is in Africa. But look at the state of our cities. We also can develop. We can also develop our health, our education system. We can develop everything. Even in the diaspora alone, there is riches. We can get all the specialties that we need in the diaspora. Today in Burkina Faso, we are thinking about implementing Polytechnic University just to train scientific engineers from Africa, from Burkina Faso, from the black race. And he concluded by saying, I think you will be welcome to learn. This is a visionary leader. This is a leader thinking about the development of the nation and the well-being of the people, not the figures in the bank account. Ibrahim Traore came to power, and you know what he did? Amazingly, he cut down the salary of the politicians by 30% and then increased the salary of the workers by 50%. This is a visionary leader. Respect, lovely people.